Why? I won't be able to give you a lot of details on all the subjects tonight, but I would tell you this. We have a website where we've gone into detail on over 2,000 subjects like this. You're welcome to visit the website, and we've linked to over 8,000 more, or 7,000 more, for a total of around 9,000 different links that you can visit to our website. It's called todayislam.com. It's in English, and I'm sorry I'm not able to speak the local language here, which you call Papiamento. I can't say much, except what? Donkey. But I have to be careful, it's going to come out MR, donkey. Sorry about that. But the main thing that we want to think about is that for sure the scientists have some motivation. Somebody's funding that. Somebody's putting a lot of money into these scientific activities and their research to keep people believing that everything came out of a big boom, by accident, by chance. There's no God. And not only that, something very despicable is to say that a human being came out of a monkey. You say, well, what's wrong with saying something like that? I'll tell you why. Because that's exactly where racism will come from. That is exactly where people who have lighter colored skin will look at people with darker colored skin and say, you still haven't evolved. And that's what they did. At the time of Darwin, which was about 1859, people didn't have the ability to research and know the things that we know in science today. But the scientists have been able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that what he theorized didn't work at all. Let me just touch on one of his issues and then you can see. Now keep in mind, he's a person from London where they hardly ever get any sunshine. And when they do, it's full of water, because it rains a lot over there. The man never went anywhere, and he's an amateur naturalist, and he went around to the Galapagos Islands. While he was visiting from island to island, he noticed that the birds on the different islands had different shaped, what do you call it? Pico de gallo? Beaks. Some were pointy, and some were flat, and some were shaped with a curve so they could eat fruit. Each one of them had their beak adjusted to the environment that they lived in, and so he thought that that was some stage of evolution. But he forgot to take into consideration all these birds are alive at the same time. Whoops. Well, remember, he was only an amateur. And not only that, consider this as well. In 1998, in October, in our hometown of San Antonio, Texas, on the PBS channel, Public Broadcasting Service, they had a special talking about the weather phenomenon known as El Nino. And in this weather phenomenon, they give a long explanation of how it works and where it comes from and what it does to the environment. Just in passing, they said, the announcer said, it would be funny for Darwin to be here today to realize what just happened in the Galapagos Islands. He said whenever the El Nino came through, it changed the environment, it changed the way the plants were. Within 6 months, it was totally different on those islands, he said. And guess what? When the eggs hatched, the beaks of the birds were different so that they could eat what was there. If that's evolution, that's pretty fast, isn't it? Who did that? So there are many proofs. And then we can look at our own lives day after day after day and see how many times we've asked for something and it came back to us. How did we get this? We asked something to happen and it happened. How did that happen? You wanted somebody's phone number and then they just called you out of the clear blue. How does that come about? And if you say random chance, I want you to stop and think. That's just like saying the universe is a random chance. Is there such a thing as a random chance? I invite you to consider two things. First of all, take a water glass and walk outside to the cement and drop it. And see what happens to it. What will happen? That water glass, we'll take the water out first, I'll drink it. Then take it out there and drop it. What will happen? In a lot of little pieces? Or will it fall down and make 6 little tiny glasses, and they're all filled up with tea? Will it happen? Never. How many would you drop out here before they'll break and fall into just exactly 6 little glasses with nothing left over? What's the random chance? 0. Here's another one for you. A tornado comes through a junkyard, okay? And it whips around in the junkyard, and as it leaves, what's sitting behind is a brand new car sitting there with a motor running. And you're laughing at something that small, but you can look at the universe and say there's no God. La ilaha illallah. It's impossible. The only conclusion you have to say, there must be a God. There has to be a God. Because otherwise, how did we get our brain? And if you said, well, because this is part of evolution, because people used to be knuckle draggers walking like this, didn't have any smarts. But then over time they got smarter, the next group got smarter and smarter. Then I'm going to ask you a question. When you look back and see what the Romans were capable of doing 2,000 years ago, and what the Egyptians were capable of doing 5,000 years ago, and what the people of Iraq and Balad Hashem were capable of doing 10,000 years ago, and what the Chinese were capable of doing 15,000 years ago, and then look at us today and wonder why we're in such a bad shape. We can put a person on the moon, but we can't even be nice to our neighbor. Ask yourself if we're progressing. Are we? And I think not. The human being has a gift of intellect. It has another gift, a gift of emotion, heart. We're smart, we can figure things out, but sometimes we can override that smartness. Let me give you an example of that. Suppose we were to take a starving animal, like a dog or a cat, starving, and we put fresh meat in a bowl and set it in the middle of the room and then turn the animal loose. What will they do? You say, what's the question here? There's no question. The food's gone and so is the animal, right? Of course. That's what they will do. Will you do it 100 times? Will you eat it 100 times? Yes. 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, it will always be yes. Because hungry animals eat food. That's what they do. But a human being, when you had children and you saw them hungry and you had food in front of you, but you preferred for your children, so you starved. You could have eaten the food, but you didn't. You gave it to them. Why? Because your heart overrode your mentality. Where did that heart come from? And what we know in Islam, it comes from God. That emotion that you have, the compassion that you have, the concern that you have, the love that you have in your heart comes from where? God gives it to you. And in Islam, we know that God sent down His rahmah, His grace, His mercy to all the human beings for all time. And He sent down this and all the love and the mercy that there exists for all of the mothers for their children is all a part of this mercy, and it's only one part of His mercy. He has 100 parts of this kind of mercy, and this is only one out of 100. And the other 99 parts of mercy, the grace, He's saving for the believers on the day of judgment. And that's an amazing thing to think about. How can we believe less than that? There must be a God. Where does it come from? We have to admit that. So we've talked about this. I want to ask now, who is this God? Who is this Creator? That's an important question, and it needs a real answer. The answers that we come with have got to be testable. The answers have to be testable. You have to test it. You cannot just say, oh, I heard somebody say, and then just take that. That's not proof. It's not really faith. It's kind of stupid. It's kind of stupid to think